On that day in Los Angeles, the sky wore a delicate shroud of mist, while the golden tones of sunset unfurled gracefully over the well-known path to Jake's home. Yet, the serene evening was abruptly disrupted by the jarring ring of the doorbell. Jake, weary from a long and taxing day at work, wore a frown upon his return. He had not anticipated the arrival of anyone. He approached the door and swung it open. In that instant, everything he knew spun wildly out of control. Emily lingered in the moment, her presence a complete surprise. She had lost the boldness and assurance that Jake once recalled so vividly. There was a weariness about her now, though her piercing blue eyes remained unchanged, except for the turmoil that flickered within them. Yet, it was not Emily's presence that left him in awe the most. It was the delicate hand intertwined with hers. A young girl with gentle brown curls and striking blue eyes stood next to her, eyes that reflected Emily's own. And Jake's. "Jake," Emily murmured, her voice soft yet weighted, striking deep into his heart. "It is essential that we have a conversation." Jake stood there, utterly at a loss for words. His throat constricted as the gaze of the little girl locked onto his. They possessed an innocence, yet their gaze pierced through him completely. "Who might this be?" Jake inquired, yet beneath the surface, a chilling response had begun to take shape in his thoughts. Emily paused before replying. She sank to her knees, murmuring softly to the girl, who then drifted away, meandering into the backyard as if creating a moment of solitude for the adults. They heard the door click softly as it closed behind them. Emily confronted Jake, her hands quivering ever so slightly while her face strove to maintain an air of calmness. "Her name is Lily," she said, her voice unwavering, yet each word sliced through the air like a sharp blade. "She is my daughter. However, I believe the truth is something you rightfully deserve to uncover. She belongs to more than just me." The words hit Jake with the force of a lightning bolt. Shards of recollections, long hidden beneath the surface, emerged with striking vividness. The nights were steeped in unvoiced tension, a palpable weight of emotions he had fervently attempted to conceal in the space shared with Emily. He stepped back, as though the burden of her revelation was pressing down on him with tangible force. "What are you trying to convey, Emily? How could that possibly be?" Emily shut her eyes and inhaled deeply, a calming breath that suggested she had practiced this moment countless times yet still felt unready. She confessed that she had no intention of returning. However, Lily began to inquire about her father. The secret had become too heavy to bear. Jake's gaze drifted beyond her, settling on the backyard where Lily engaged in her playful dance with the fallen leaves, her small hands deftly at work. His body lay in a state of paralysis. Years of silence. A life devoted to erasing the memories of what ought never to have occurred, now laid bare and unraveling. All was coming apart, and a tempest had just started to brew. One he understood he could not evade. As the quiet enveloped them, Emily's voice emerged, gentle yet laced with an unmistakable intensity. "I'm not here to change everything," she said, her voice laced with a sense of defeat. "I simply wish to convey this to you. If you prefer to have no association with Lily, we will take our leave. However, I believed it was important for you to be informed." Jake remained silent. He sensed that the earth below him had disintegrated, yet within the depths of his being, a delicate, tenuous light glimmered. It was an emotion he had not allowed himself to experience in many years. Anticipation. And yet, he understood that hope would inevitably guide him into an inescapable chaos. Jake found himself unable to look away from Emily's fading silhouette as she strolled into the yard, where Lily lingered among the scattered leaves. The golden light of the setting sun enveloped the little girl's face, highlighting her delicate features and those captivating blue eyes. Eyes that pressed upon Jake's heart with an undeniable weight. He endeavored to keep his calm, yet his thoughts swirled with a torrent of unending inquiries. If Emily's words held any truth, what implications would that have for the life he had meticulously constructed? That night, Jake found himself wide awake in bed, sleep eluding him. His mind whirled in an unending loop, revisiting each moment from the day. Emily's words, her tentative movements, and every subtle gesture from Lily. He recalled the way the little girl had gazed at him, her eyes filled with curiosity and keen observation, as though she were on a quest for a missing fragment in her existence. Jake found it hard to accept, yet within the depths of his mind, he could not ignore the striking similarity that linked him to Lily. The sensation was a blend of intensity and dread. He sought the truth. The following morning, Jake rose earlier than he typically would, eager to encounter Emily. Indeed, she had already taken her place in the kitchen. She lingered by the window, the gentle morning light enveloping her in a tranquil embrace, highlighting the tumultuous storm that raged within Jake. A steaming cup of coffee cradled in her hands, she gazed out the window, seemingly intent on evading his eyes. Emily. Jake's voice pierced the heavy stillness that enveloped them. She pivoted gradually, her face betraying a moment of tension before she cloaked it with her familiar air of composure. "We need to talk," he said, his tone brooking no argument. Emily set her coffee down on the counter, her arms crossing in a gesture of contemplation. "Concerning what matter?" she inquired, even though the truth was evident to them both. "Lily." Jake spoke with a certain directness, a heaviness settling in his chest as he uttered the name. Could she truly be my daughter? Emily's gaze flickered, her eyes skimming over him yet unwilling to settle. Following a prolonged silence, she at last found her voice. "Jake, I have already mentioned this to you. I did not arrive with the intention of causing upheaval in your existence. I felt it was important to share the truth with you." Her voice carried a resolute strength, yet the underlying vulnerability was impossible to ignore. Jake's heart raced as he approached, his irritation rising to a boiling point. "Yet, this alters the entire landscape, Emily. This isn't something you can simply throw at me and assume I'll carry on as if everything is normal. Lily, she is more than merely your daughter. She belongs to me as well." His voice wavered just a bit, revealing the torrent of feelings he had endeavored to keep at bay. Emily inhaled deeply, her gaze finally locking onto his. A tumultuous blend of anguish and a shadow of what could be called regret enveloped them. "I know," she murmured, her voice trembling on the edge of breaking. "That is the reason I returned. This isn't meant for me. This isn't meant for us. Yet, for Lily. She has a right to know her father, even if I find myself unprepared for this moment." Jake gazed at her, his thoughts swirling in a chaotic dance that eluded expression. This truth, this revelation. It possessed the ability to break apart all that existed. Yet somewhere, hidden beneath the layers of shock and fear, lay a flicker of something more. An opportunity. An opportunity to mend the fractures of the past, to stand by a little girl who was unmistakably his own. For the first time, Jake articulated his thoughts with unwavering confidence. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, looking at Emily with uncertainty. Yet, I yearn to give it a shot. To Lily. Emily gazed at him, her previously shielded demeanor melting slightly, allowing a solitary tear to trace its way down her cheek. Silence enveloped them both. In that delicate instant, Jake understood that despite the stormy path that lay before him, he could not turn his back. Not from Lily. Not authored by Emily. Not from the opportunity to finally set things straight. But this alters the entire landscape. Emily, Jake declared, his voice elevating just enough to reveal the encroaching frustration within him. For as long as I can remember, I believed I understood my identity, my family's essence. And then you arrive, revealing that I have a child I was completely unaware of. Do you believe I can simply embrace this without hesitation? Emily gazed at him, and in that brief instant, her eyes appeared to warm with tenderness. Jake, I'm not urging you to embrace this right away. I'm not seeking your forgiveness. However, this was something I had to do for Lily. She has the right to discover the identity of her father, and you have the right to understand that you have a daughter. Jake shook his head, sensing that everything was slipping through his fingers. How were you able to guard this secret for all those years, Emily? What gives you the right to make this decision on my behalf? Emily moved nearer, her voice unwavering yet brimming with feeling. Jake, do you believe this was my desire? I did not depart out of desire. I departed out of necessity. Upon discovering that I was pregnant, a wave of terror washed over me. How could I remain when everything that existed between us was flawed from the very beginning? Jake stood still, caught in the moment of her words. Incorrect, he reiterated, his voice hushed and taut. Are you aware of what exacerbated the situation, Emily? Your departure wasn't the issue. You never afforded me the opportunity. You didn't merely walk away. You stripped me of the most invaluable treasure I never realized was mine to begin with. Emily gazed at him, her piercing blue eyes brimming with tears, yet she swiftly averted her face. Jake, I hope this disagreement doesn't cause any pain for Lily. If a tranquil existence is what you desire for her, then I believe we ought to halt this at this very moment. Yet Jake would not allow her to depart. No, Emily, he stated with conviction, his tone resolute. I find myself unable to cease. She is my daughter, and it is impossible for me to overlook that fact. I seek to uncover all that there is to know. I must find my place in her life. Silence enveloped the room. Jake was uncertain of what he anticipated from Emily, yet when she finally turned to confront him, her eyes revealed a tumultuous struggle that appeared to be waging within her, threatening to unravel her completely. Fine, Emily murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you seek the truth? Very well, but you must prepare yourself to confront all that accompanies it. Jake nodded, feeling like he was stepping into a storm he couldn't control. Emily exited the kitchen in silence, leaving Jake behind, enveloped in a whirlwind of unasked questions and one stark, undeniable truth. His existence would be irrevocably altered from that moment onward. Jake stood motionless in the kitchen, his hands pressed against the counter, as if seeking support to withstand the overwhelming burden of everything surrounding him. Emily's words reverberated in his mind, stirring up memories he had long tried to forget. He was reluctant to confront them again, yet they emerged with a startling clarity, as vivid as if they had transpired only yesterday. He recalled the afternoon Emily first entered this house, enveloping the space with an aura of strangeness and a chill, inscrutable presence. She emerged from a polished vehicle, her keen eyes scanning the surroundings with a fleeting intensity. In those days, Jake had regarded her as an eternal outsider, a figure destined to linger on the periphery, never truly woven into the fabric of their family. Yet he had erred in ways he could never have anticipated. Emily had transformed into his whole universe. Evenings brimming with unease and silent desire flooded his thoughts once more. Jake remembered the way Emily would perch on the balcony, her fingers dancing over the guitar strings, sending melodies floating into the stillness of the night. It transcended mere sound. It was an essence, a haunting presence that penetrated the depths of his soul. He would linger in the shadows, captivated, unable to escape the anguish and fervor intricately entwined in her songs. In that moment, he understood that Emily was not the distant and indifferent figure she had always seemed to portray. Her music unveiled a profound sorrow and vulnerability that eluded his grasp yet ignited an insatiable longing within him. Jake shut his eyes, the recollection of their inaugural kiss rushing to the forefront of his mind. It lacked the flawless charm of a cinematic romance, the sort of moment that unfolds with effortless grace on screen. It was a portrayal of desperation, marred by its imperfections. A meeting of two fractured spirits in pursuit of something to grasp. The warmth of her lips lingered on his, a bittersweet reminder of a love they both understood was forbidden. That night, they transcended all limits, discarding every preconceived notion to embark on a relationship that defied definition. Yet, it was fleeting. Everything started to come apart at the seams. Jake recalled the days that ensued, the way Ryan, his dearest companion, had regarded him with a mix of skepticism and disillusionment. Ryan had unearthed their hidden truth, and the ensuing confrontation lingered as one of Jake's most excruciating recollections. Ryan's voice echoed in his mind, laced with fury and a sense of betrayal. "You didn't merely wound your family, Jake. Your actions inflict pain on those in your vicinity." Those words lingered in his mind, etching a scar that never quite faded. And then, Emily departed. He could still envision her departing from the house, her shoulders rigid as she bore the burden of her choice. "This is the only way to save both of us," she had said, her voice unwavering despite the tears that shimmered in her eyes. Jake stood frozen, a spectator to her vanishing, carrying away with her the fragment of himself that had finally awakened. The past came rushing back like a tidal wave, drowning Jake in guilt and regret. He opened his eyes, but the image of Emily lingered, etched into his mind like a ghost he couldn't shake. Now, with Lily's presence, it wasn't just their shared history that haunted him. It was the realization that their past mistakes had left a legacy he couldn't ignore. Taking a deep breath, Jake knew there was no going back. He couldn't change the past, but he could fight for the future. For Lily. For Emily. And for the chance to finally do something right, even if it meant facing the storm head-on. And then, Emily left. Jake would never forget that day, the way she stepped through the doorway without ever looking back. "This is the only way to save both of us," she had said, her voice dry and emotionless, though her tear-filled eyes betrayed the truth. Jake had stood there, powerless, watching her walk away with his heart and every word he hadn't yet spoken. The past came rushing back like a relentless wave, drowning Jake in guilt and regret. He opened his eyes, but the image of Emily lingered, etched into his mind like an immovable shadow. Now, seeing Lily, he didn't just see the physical resemblance. He saw the pain of their shared history, the sacrifices Emily had endured alone. Jake drew in a deep breath, forcing himself to steady. He knew he couldn't change what had happened. But now, with Lily's arrival, he realized he had a chance to make things right, to atone for the mistakes of the past. Yet deep down, he wasn't sure if he had the strength to face it all. Because the past, no matter how buried, always lingered like a ghost, haunting him with every step. Jake stood before the door to the living room, where the warm glow of the lamp spilled faintly through the narrow gap. He knew Emily was inside, sitting on the sofa with a glass of red wine in her hand, just as she always did when she needed to think. But tonight wasn't an ordinary night, and Jake could no longer delay. He inhaled deeply, the weight in his chest threatening to crush him, and then pushed the door open. Emily turned her head at the sound of his footsteps. For a brief moment, surprise flickered across her face, but it quickly vanished, replaced by her usual calm composure. The wineglass in her hand caught the light, its crimson surface gleaming, but nothing could hide the weariness etched in her striking blue eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice low, almost indifferent. Jake stood there silently, unable to speak. He sensed he was perched on the brink of a tempest, with the sole choice being to advance, regardless of how deeply it might engulf him. "Emily," he finally uttered, his voice thick with the weight of unspoken feelings. "It's time for a conversation. Concerning Lily." With a gentle exhale, she placed her glass on the table and folded her arms across her chest. "I believed we had covered all there was to discuss," she responded, her voice unwavering, yet Jake could detect the underlying defensiveness in her gaze. "The truth is known to you. What more is there to talk about? Do you really believe I can simply move on from this?" Jake advanced, his fury and anguish rising with every utterance. "You arrive here, revealing that I have a child after all these years, and you think I should simply accept this revelation without a single question?" Emily's frigid stare pierced through him, yet Jake caught the subtle quiver in her hands, a fissure in her facade that she struggled to conceal. "Jake, I didn't come here to make things harder for you," she said, her voice steady yet tinged with tension. "I felt it was important for you to be aware of the truth, to have the opportunity if you so desired. However, if you choose not to be involved in Lily's life, we can certainly take our leave. It poses no issue." "Is it really not an issue?" Jake echoed, his voice fracturing like a wave colliding with a rugged coastline. "Emily, she is my daughter, our daughter. Do you really believe I can just overlook that? Do you really believe I could abandon my own flesh and blood?" Emily sprang to her feet, her blue eyes igniting with fierce intensity. "Do you really believe this is what I wanted, Jake?" she cried out, her voice quaking with a mix of fury and sorrow. "Did you really believe I didn't want you by my side when Lily came into the world? Do you believe I didn't long for your presence by my side as I spent the night attempting to calm her cries, facing it all on my own? Little do you know the lengths I went to in order to ensure Lily's stability, to safeguard her tranquility." Jake remained motionless, stunned by the intensity of Emily's eruption. He had never encountered her in such a state, so unguarded, so devoid of the usual armor of composure and detachment she typically displayed. He sensed the burden of the anguish she had borne throughout the years, a sorrow to which he had unwittingly added his own weight. Yet, he found himself unable to withdraw at this moment. "So, why didn't you share that with me?" he inquired, his tone subdued yet tinged with a hint of accusation. What led you to make that decision on my behalf? For Lily. You left me with no options. Emily. You have stripped me of my right to be her father. Emily remained silent. She averted her gaze, moving toward the window to gaze into the enveloping darkness. Her shoulders trembled ever so slightly, and Jake understood that she was making an effort to conceal her tears. Because I was scared, she finally whispered, her voice delicate and barely audible, compelling Jake to lean in closer to catch her words. Fear gripped me at the thought of you discovering the truth, a dread that you would come to despise me, that the bond we shared would be irreparably broken by the shadows of our past. Fear gripped me, for I believed that your presence would only exacerbate the situation. Jake stepped forward with uncertainty, his heart constricting at her words. Emily, my feelings for you are far from hate. He spoke softly, his tone imbued with a sincerity that caused her shoulders to tense. Fury coursed through me. I felt pain. Yet, I never harbored any hatred towards you. I loathed myself for my inadequacy, for my failure to prevent your departure. Emily pivoted to confront him, her eyes shimmering with unfallen tears. Jake, I cannot reverse the actions that have taken place. However, I cannot allow Lily to grow up without knowing the identity of her father. That is the reason for my presence here. Not for me, not for us, but for her. Jake gazed at her, his thoughts a tempest stirred by the weight of her words. This truth, this revelation, had dismantled all that was known. Yet beneath the fear and the pain, something else lingered. An opportunity to reconstruct, to stand by a young girl who sought his presence. With a quivering breath, Jake finally uttered his words. I'm not sure if I'll excel at this, he confessed, but I'm eager to give it a shot. Emily studied him for a long moment, her expression a blend of hope and trepidation. She nodded with deliberation, a solitary tear tracing a path down her cheek. If you wish to be included in her life, Jake, you must demonstrate that commitment to her, not merely to me. Jake nodded, his determination hardening. I shall, he declared with conviction. I won't let her down, nor will I let you. Emily hesitated to reply. Instead, she offered him a delicate, nearly ethereal smile, a flicker of trust that had remained hidden within her for years. In silence, she pivoted and exited the room, leaving Jake alone, burdened by the gravity of an unfamiliar truth. The path before him promised to be fraught with challenges, yet for the first time in many years, Jake sensed the awakening of a feeling he believed had long since faded away. Anticipation. This time, he would grasp it firmly, refusing to let it escape his grasp. Jake inched forward, positioning himself just behind Emily, yet pausing at the brink of contact. Emily, he uttered, his voice quaking with earnestness. I have never harbored hatred towards you. Anger coursed through me. I felt pain. Yet, I never harbored any hatred towards you. I loathed myself for my inability to keep you close. Emily turned around, her eyes edged with crimson, shimmering with unvoiced feelings. Jake, I cannot alter the past, she murmured, her voice trembling beneath the burden of her confession. Yet, I could not allow Lily to navigate her life in ignorance of her father's identity. Thus, my return was inevitable. Not out of a desire to return to our past, but because Lily has a right to the truth. Jake's gaze met hers, and he felt the weight of her words pierce his heart like a sharp blade. "I don't know if I can be good at this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, trembling with uncertainty. "Yet, I find myself unwilling to squander even a single moment more. I wish to be present, not solely for Lily but for you as well, if you would allow it." Emily remained silent for a moment. She examined him intently, her gaze probing his features for something: truth, conviction, or perhaps a glimmer of hope. At last, she nodded, yet her eyes remained clouded with concern. "If you wish to be a part of Lily's world, Jake, your desire must be genuine. She deserves more than a fleeting presence that comes and goes." Jake nodded, his resolve solidifying, his eyes aflame with determination. "I shall not fade away, I assure you." Yet, as the words escaped him, he understood that this vow marked merely the onset of a challenging journey that lay before him. He stood poised, anticipation coursing through him. At last, the realization dawned upon him. Love may not always come easily, nor may it always align with what is deemed right, yet it remains a pursuit worthy of our fiercest battles. As the evening wore on, Jake stood once more before the living room door, his gaze fixed on the soft golden glow that seeped through the slender opening. He was aware that Emily occupied the space within, perched on the couch, a glass of red wine cradled in her hand, just as she frequently did when contemplation beckoned. Yet this evening felt different from all the others, and Jake understood that he could no longer postpone his decision. With a deep breath, his chest constricted by anticipation, he pushed the door open. Emily pivoted her gaze at the echo of his footsteps. For an ephemeral instant, astonishment flickered across her features, only to swiftly dissolve into her customary serene composure. The wine glass she held glimmered softly in the warm glow, yet it did little to conceal the weariness etched in her striking blue eyes. "Struggling to find rest?" she inquired, her tone gentle and distant, as though she were already aware of the response. Jake paused, enveloped in silence, as he sought the perfect words to express his thoughts. He stood at the precipice of a tempest, compelled to move ahead, fully aware that it might engulf him entirely. "Emily," he uttered at last, his voice gravelly, burdened by the depth of his feelings. "It's time for a conversation. A glimpse into Lily's world." With a soft sigh, she set the glass down on the coffee table, her arms crossing over her chest in a gesture of contemplation. "I believed we had covered all that was necessary," she responded, her voice steady, yet Jake could detect the subtle defensiveness lurking beneath. "The truth is known to you. What else remains to be explored? Do you genuinely believe I can simply let this go?" Jake moved nearer, his voice escalating with the anguish and exasperation that had been festering within him. "You arrive, revealing that I have a daughter after all this time, and you anticipate that I will simply accept it without seeking any answers." Emily's composed gaze remained steady, yet Jake caught the subtle tremor in her hands, a fissure in her defenses. "Jake, I didn't come here to make this harder for you," she said, her voice steady yet tinged with tension. "I arrived here with the belief that you were entitled to the truth, to seize the opportunity if you so desired. However, should you choose not to, Lily and I are prepared to take our leave. There is no issue at hand." "Not a problem," Jake repeated, his voice shattering like a wave colliding with sharp stones. "Emily is my daughter. Our beloved daughter. Do you believe I can simply overlook that? Is it possible for me to abandon my own child?" Emily rose suddenly, her blue eyes blazing with intensity. "Do you believe this is what I desired, Jake?" she cried out, her voice quaking with a mix of fury and sorrow. "Did you really believe I didn't wish for your presence when Lily came into the world? Do you believe I didn't long for your presence by my side as I spent the night soothing her cries, grappling with the weight of it all alone? You cannot fathom the sacrifices I made to ensure stability for Lily, to provide her with a life filled with tranquility." Jake stood motionless, taken aback by her sudden eruption. He had never witnessed Emily in such a vulnerable state, so devoid of the frosty demeanor she typically maintained. He sensed the anguish she had concealed, the burden she had carried in solitude for countless years. Yet, retreat was no longer an option for him. "So, why didn't you share that with me?" he inquired, his tone softened yet still laden with disapproval. "What led you to make that decision on my behalf, for Lily? You left me with no options, Emily. You have robbed me of the opportunity to be her father." Emily lapsed into silence. She averted her gaze from him, making her way to the window, where she gazed into the enveloping darkness beyond. Her shoulders quivered, and Jake understood she was making an effort to conceal her tears. In a moment of vulnerability, she finally whispered, her voice so delicate that he had to lean in closer to catch her words. "Fear gripped me at the thought of you discovering the truth, a dread that you might come to despise me, that the weight of what transpired would forever taint your ability to forgive. I feared that your presence would only exacerbate the situation." Jake moved nearer, his heart aching at the raw honesty in her voice. "Emily, I could never hate you," he said softly, his voice filled with genuine emotion. Fury coursed through me. I felt pain. Yet, I could never bring myself to hate you. I loathed myself for my inability to prevent your departure. Emily pivoted to confront him, her gaze brimming with tears she had ceased to conceal. "Jake, I cannot reverse the actions that have already taken place. Yet, I couldn't allow Lily to navigate life without the knowledge of her father. That is the reason for my presence here. This isn't suited for my tastes. This is not meant for us. Yet for her." Jake locked eyes with her, and in that moment, he caught a glimpse of the slightest spark of hope flickering in her gaze. It may not have been grand, but it sufficed. "I don't know if I'll be good at this," he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "Yet, I yearn to give it a shot. To Lily. And for you alone. If you would permit me." Emily observed him, her face reflecting a blend of anguish and optimism. At last, she gave a slight nod, a solitary tear tracing its way down her cheek. "If you wish to be included in her life, Jake, then demonstrate it, to her and to me." Jake nodded, a blazing resolve igniting in his gaze. He vowed, "I will. I shall not fail her. Or perhaps you." Emily remained silent, yet for the first time in years, a small, tentative smile graced her lips. It lacked forgiveness, and it was devoid of certainty. Yet, it marked the start of something new. That moment was precisely what Jake required to embark on his journey ahead. Jake edged nearer, positioning himself behind her, yet he lingered in uncertainty, reluctant to extend his hand. "Emily, I never hated you," he declared, his voice trembling with genuine emotion. "Though I felt anger and disappointment, hatred was never a part of my emotions towards you. I found myself consumed by self-loathing, unable to grasp the essence of you. Emily pivoted to confront him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears and a torrent of unvoiced feelings. "Jake, I cannot reverse the events that transpired," she uttered, her voice laden with sincerity. "Yet, I couldn't bear the thought of Lily growing up without knowing the identity of her father. That is the reason I returned. Not out of a desire to return to our past, but because Lily is entitled to the truth." Jake locked eyes with her, sensing her words slice through him like a sharp knife. "I don't know if I can be good at this," he confessed, his voice barely rising above a whisper. "Yet, I refuse to squander even a single moment more. I long to be present in that moment. Not solely for Lily, but for you as well, if you permit me." Emily paused, her gaze probing his features for any hint of uncertainty. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation as she observed him, her stillness a subtle challenge to his determination. At last, she gave a nod, yet her demeanor still bore a hint of wariness. "If you wish to be a part of Lily's world, Jake, it must come from a place of genuine desire. She deserves more than a fleeting presence that comes and goes." Jake nodded, the intensity of his resolve shining brightly in his gaze. "I shall not fade away. I vowed within the depths of my being." He understood that the promise marked merely the inception of a lengthy, unpredictable odyssey. Yet, for the first time, he stood prepared to confront it, realizing at last that love, regardless of its chaos or anguish, was eternally worth the struggle. Jake lingered in the living room, enveloped in silence following his intense exchange with Emily. His heart felt as if it had been wrung dry, yet it throbbed with a tumult of emotions: anger, anxiety, and an unforeseen glimmer of hope. Lily, his beloved daughter. The mere notion of those words sent him spiraling, ensnaring his thoughts in a chaotic web. He found himself at a loss, unsure of where to start or how to comprehend this unfamiliar reality. Yet, just as he was about to delve into the labyrinth of his thoughts, the front door let out a sudden, eerie creak. Ryan entered, his keen gaze slicing through the atmosphere with precision. Jake instantly sensed a change in his oldest friend. The familiar warmth and easygoing nature had vanished, supplanted by a barely contained simmering rage. Jake felt a heavy weight in his stomach as the unsettling truth dawned on him. Ryan was already aware. "Is that you, Ryan?" Jake began. Yet, just as he was about to proceed, Ryan lifted a hand, signaling for silence. "Don't," Ryan said, his voice chilling the very air around them. "I have listened to it all, every word. You and Emily, Lily, everything." Jake sensed the earth trembled beneath him, as though the core of his existence had been violently torn asunder. "In what manner? Where might you have it?" "Doesn't matter where I heard it," Ryan interrupted, his anger simmering just beneath the surface with every word he spoke. "What truly matters is how on earth you managed to pull this off, Jake. You concealed it from all, from me, and even more painfully. Your actions have impacted your family." Jake stood up from his chair, yet the thoughts he yearned to express remained trapped within him. He remained rooted in place, his gaze locked onto Ryan's, desperately seeking a means to articulate his thoughts, yet the burden of his remorse rendered him mute. Ryan, however, was resolute in his decision to forego any explanation. "Are you aware of the challenges Emily has faced?" Ryan inquired, his voice trembling as fury welled within him. "I was present, Jake. I observed her tirelessly dedicate herself to the arduous task of raising Lily. I witnessed her confront each challenge in solitude, enduring the kind of trials for which your presence was essential. You were not, Jake. I was. And now you believe you can simply appear, as if none of it holds any significance? Jake shut his eyes, seeking to calm the tempest raging within him. Ryan, I understand that you're feeling upset. I am aware that I have erred. What transpired between Emily and me? It's far more intricate than you might imagine. Intricate? Ryan let out a scoff, his laughter laced with a chilling bitterness. Do you believe that dismantling your own family is a complex endeavor? Jake, this matter extends beyond your own concerns. It revolves around Emily. It revolves around Lily. It encompasses all those you've wounded throughout your journey. Have you given them any thought at all? Jake recoiled at Ryan's words, each one striking him with the force of a blow. Yet he compelled himself to meet his friend's eyes, despite the heavy burden of shame pressing down on him. He spoke softly. I have thought about them. Yet, his voice resonated with a fresh sense of assurance. I recognize that I've made a mistake, Ryan. Yet, I find myself presented with an opportunity to set things straight. I refuse to let another precious moment with Lily slip away. I desire to take on the role of her father. Ryan fixed his gaze on him, the anger still simmering beneath the surface, morphing into a deeper, more profound disappointment. Do you wish to take on the role of her father? Ryan echoed, his voice heavy with incredulity. Do you truly believe you have the ability to accomplish that, Jake? This goes beyond mere appearances and the act of stepping in to create the illusion of resolution. This narrative unfolds around Emily, exploring the trials she has faced. I'm uncertain whether you merit this opportunity. Ryan's words seared through the air, yet rather than crumbling beneath their intensity, Jake discovered an unexpected fire igniting within him, a determination he had never realized was there. You're right, Ryan, Jake said, his voice gaining strength. Perhaps I am not worthy of it. Lily is my daughter, and regardless of your opinions, I will stand firm in my fight for her. You are unaware of the full story that unfolded between Emily and me. You have witnessed merely the fragments she chose to reveal. Yet, here I stand, resolute and unwavering. Ryan shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Do you really believe this revolves around you? Jake, you have already shattered everything once. Please, refrain from exacerbating the situation. Before Jake could utter a word, Ryan pivoted sharply and exited, leaving a heavy silence that lingered in the atmosphere like an impending storm. Jake remained still, the burden of their disagreement heavy upon him. He understood that their friendship might never mend after this, yet he was equally aware that he couldn't allow that to deter him. Ryan's words had pierced him profoundly. Yet they had also sparked a fierce determination within. Jake was unable to alter the past, yet he could strive for the future, for Lily, for Emily, and for his own sake. Regardless of the anger or disappointment swirling within Ryan, Jake understood the necessity of pressing onward. The path before him promised to be fraught with obstacles, yet for the first time, Jake sensed an inner strength to confront them head-on. He was not merely battling for redemption. He was engaged in a struggle for love, for family, and for the opportunity to set things right at last. Jake found himself in solitude within the living room, enveloped by the gentle, golden glow of the waning afternoon sun. Yet no warmth could penetrate the shadow that enveloped him, saturating the room with an inescapable heaviness. The encounter with Ryan ignited a tempest within him, compelling him to face the question he had long evaded since uncovering the reality of Lily. What course of action would he take now? The response had evolved beyond the mere dichotomy of yes or no. This situation transcended the dynamics between him and Emily, as well as the deteriorating bond he shared with Ryan. All things now centered on a singular individual: Lily. Jake gazed into the yard, where the little girl perched on the steps, her small hands drawing chaotic circles in the dirt. She appeared serene, her existence undisturbed for the time being. Yet, Jake found himself endlessly pondering whether his existence in her world would serve as a blessing or a weight to bear. Emily remained silent, yet the subtle smile that danced on her lips conveyed everything Jake needed to know. Outside, Lily glanced back at the window, her expression brightening as she waved with infectious enthusiasm. Jake returned the smile, and in that instant, he understood that regardless of the challenges that lay ahead, he would go to any lengths to preserve the luminous happiness reflected in her gaze. The evening descended gently, draping the sky and the backyard in a warm, amber glow. Jake rested against the living room window, his gaze locked on Lily as she dashed barefoot over the vibrant green grass. Her laughter, bright and clear, shattered the oppressive silence within him, a sweet tune that filled the chasm he had not known was so profound. Yet even in the midst of joy, a persistent unease gnawed at him, a weight of overwhelming responsibility that overshadowed his every thought. In that moment, Jake grasped the profound weight of a responsibility that transcended his own existence. The story extended far beyond Lily alone. It revolved around the individual he aspired to be for her. As he stood there, Emily stepped into the room, cradling a mug of tea that radiated warmth against her palms. Her silence spoke volumes, and that was all that was required. She filled the room with her presence, the soft golden light from the window tracing the gentle curves of her face and illuminating the quiet strength in her eyes. She strolled over and set the mug down on the table before taking her place beside Jake at the window. They observed in unison as Lily attempted to grasp the descending leaves, her tiny hands stretching out with enthusiasm toward the golden forms that twirled gracefully in the breeze. A brief smile danced upon Emily's lips, only to vanish swiftly, giving way to a contemplative, distant gaze. "She's so much like you," Emily murmured, her voice gentle and tinged with a hint of nostalgia. "It's not merely her gaze. It's the manner in which she perceives the world unfolding around her. Lily seems to embody your quiet nature, reflecting a tendency to ponder deeply rather than voice her thoughts frequently." Jake shifted his gaze toward her, his eyes laden with unspoken feelings. "I'm not sure I possess the qualities needed to be a good father," he confessed, his voice quivering just a bit. "Yet, I yearn to give it a shot. To Lily. And for you alone." Emily remained silent, her gaze unwaveringly fixed on Lily. The silence lingered in the air, neither cold nor unfriendly, but rich with unvoiced reflections and a fragile sense of comprehension. Jake had come to know Emily deeply, recognizing that she was not one to extend her trust without careful consideration. He must demonstrate his worth, not through mere words, but through tangible deeds. As the sun sank beneath the horizon, casting a warm twilight glow over the yard, Lily burst forth, her small arms wrapped tightly around a magnificent golden leaf, treating it as though it were the most cherished treasure she had ever discovered. "Mother! Father! Behold this!" With a delighted squeal, she raised the leaf high for their eager eyes to behold. Her melodious voice resonated, prompting instinctive smiles from both Jake and Emily. In that instant, Jake sensed a profound transformation within, an emotion that was entirely foreign to him. It was joy, genuine and profound. Jake knelt to gently accept the leaf from Lily's tiny hands. "What a stunning sight this is. Where did you come across it?" he inquired, his tone unwavering, even as his heart raced within his chest. It marked the inaugural moment when Lily uttered the word "Dad" to him. Their two simple words resonated in his thoughts, a harmonious melody that filled the void he had borne for ages. Emily remained still, her gaze fixed upon them, her expression a puzzle that Jake struggled to decipher. Hopeful, yet cautious, as though she was traversing unknown seas. She approached with grace, kneeling beside Lily and tenderly caressing her delicate curls. "Would you like to hold on to this leaf?" Emily inquired, her tone inviting yet laced with a subtle sentiment she struggled to conceal. "I can locate a book to preserve it, ensuring it doesn't fade away." "Absolutely, Mommy!" Lily exclaimed, her excitement illuminating her petite features. She then turned to Jake, her bright blue eyes glimmering with excitement. "Daddy, will you hold it with me as well?" Jake's smile broke free, unable to be contained. "Naturally, my dear. We shall embark on this journey side by side," he replied, his tone gentle yet resolute. In that instant, he understood that these brief, ephemeral connections were all he genuinely required. These were the delicate fragments that would come together to create the intricate picture of a relationship he had never realized he could possess. Later that night, as Lily drifted into slumber, Jake and Emily found themselves seated on the balcony, a space that had previously served as a backdrop for their most intricate feelings. In the stillness of the night, the gentle illumination of the moon bathed the surroundings in a shimmering silver hue. The gentle evening breeze wafted the delicate aroma of jasmine from the garden below, and Jake breathed in deeply, experiencing an uncommon tranquility. "Emily," he began, his voice calm yet soft. "I'm aware that the path ahead for us may be fraught with challenges, yet I want you to understand that my resolve remains steadfast. I won't abandon Lily, and I certainly won't abandon you." Emily turned to face him, the moonlight glimmering in her blue eyes, causing them to sparkle like polished glass. "Jake, I can't assure you that everything will turn out fine," she said, her voice laced with a hint of caution. "We have inflicted wounds upon one another, and the journey to recovery will be a lengthy one. I hesitate to inspire hope, fearing it may lead to disappointment." "I don't need you to promise me anything," Jake replied, his voice steady and resolute. "I simply seek your assurance that you are open to allowing me the opportunity to demonstrate that I can be the reliable person you and Lily can count on." Emily remained silent, yet after a brief pause, she gave a subtle nod. Though modest in nature, the gesture bore an unvoiced significance, acknowledging his earnestness and hinting at a flicker of trust. They sat together in silence, yet it was a silence transformed, no longer burdened by the weight of the past. The stillness enveloped them, rich with unspoken comprehension and a delicate whisper of optimism. Their tale had yet to reach its conclusion. Wounds awaited healing, bridges stood in need of reconstruction, and challenges loomed on the horizon, yet unseen. Yet, within the stillness of that home, bathed in the soft luminescence of the moon, a profound understanding blossomed between them. They stood poised to embark on their initial journey ahead. Regardless of the uncertainties that lay ahead, they would forever possess Lily, the indomitable bond that connected them all.